Today we're going to talk about the early civilizations in India. We're going to look primarily in this area here, but we're also going to talk about some of the structures of government and society that still some of them still exist today. So here we go. So the Indian subcontinent. So just talking about the land of India because it's going to definitely shape the people. India is what's called a subcontinent, and I'm going to show you a video in just a second. But it's called that because it's not really part of Asia. When you're looking at the continental plates, India was separate, and then it kind of slammed up into Asia, and that's kind of what created the Himalayan mountains. I'll show you a video in just a second that kind of shows that. In the north, that's where the Himalayas are. It's the tallest mountain range in the world. It does contain the tallest mountain in the world, which is Mount Everest. Just to the south of that is the Ganges River, and this is one of the more important regions of Indian culture today. And then in the west is the Indus River Valley, and this is where we're going to see a lot of those early civilizations kind of spring up. South of these two river valleys is the Deccan Plateau. The Deccan Plateau is a hilly and dry plateau, and that's in the southern Ganges Valley to the southern end of India. So it actually takes up a pretty big section of India. And then on the coasts, on the east and west coasts, lie kind of lush plains, and this today is where it's most densely populated. So this video, like I said, this is the video. This is a Pangea animation, so it goes from Pangea to today, and I just kind of want you to watch. Here's India right here, and I want you to watch as it just kind of slowly moves. It'll move down south, and then it'll take like a really quick directory up into Asia, and that's when the Himalayas are created. It's still actually pushing into Asia, so the Himalayas are actually getting taller. Okay, so there's India there. Okay, so it's still kind of hanging on Africa, and there's Australia and Antarctica there. And so that's still kind of one big continent. Now they're starting to drift apart a little bit. And now it's going to break away from Antarctica, and it's going to very quickly, you can see how quickly it's moving in comparison to the others, into Asia. And as it hits there, that is creating the Himalayan mountains. Okay, and then that last second there was today. So this is this count here. I'm going to show it to you one more time. This count here is how many millions of years ago this is. Okay, so once again, watch. India is going to just push right up into Asia. Here it comes. And boom. And now we have really tall mountains. All right, and that's what we look like today. Okay, so this right here is the geography of India again. So you can see where I was talking about. So you get the Ganges rivers over here, the Indus is over here, and then this is where you have the plains. Like I said, this is today the highest population. There's a lot in this area here too, in the Ganges River Valley. But you can see this is the Deccan Plateau, and you can kind of see it in this as well. So early civilization is going to develop, like I said, in the Indus River Valley. So a civilization is going to flourish from 3000 to 1500 BC. And archaeologists found remains of about 1,000 settlements in this area. So that's in this whole total area. But there's two sites that have ruins of the major cities, and that's Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. And the advanced civilization that flourished in these cities is called the Harappan or the Indus civilization. Sometimes it's called the Harappan Empire. Okay, so that's it there. So each of these cities had around 35,000 people, which at the time was like a crazy amount of people. And each was planned very carefully. So this is kind of what it looked like more on street level, but this is what it would look like aerially. Okay, so you could see that it was planned before it was made because there's a grid of streets and they're divided into walled neighborhoods. And some houses were even as high as 3 stories. Buildings were made of mud bricks, and they even had public wells that supplied water, and they even had bathrooms, and those bathrooms had a drainage system, so they could get all that waste out of the city, so the city wasn't disgusting. So like in the Middle Ages in Europe, they didn't really have sewage systems in towns and villages. So what they did was they went in a bucket and then they would pour the bucket out the window. But as a result of all that is the streets were just gross. Okay. And then they also had a chute system that would even take trash to public garbage bins. Okay, so they were a pretty advanced civilization at the time. So this careful structure that we just saw is major evidence of it having a very well organized government. So the Harappan rulers based their power on a belief in divine assistance. So this means that they believed in divine right of kings. Okay, so religion and political power in this were closely linked. And the priests would perform rituals to a fertility goddess to guarantee a good annual harvest every year. Now, their economy was largely agrarian or agricultural, and their chief crops were wheat, barley, and peas. And they traded a lot with Mesopotamia. So remember, we talked about Mesopotamia, that's over in present day Iraq. It's not super far from India. So they traded a lot with them, and so they traded things like copper, lumber, various luxury goods for the Sumerian, for Sumerian textiles, and then food. And much of this trade was made by ship all through the Persian Gulf. So what they would do is they would go down the Persian Gulf and then out to around basically Saudi Arabia, and then out to India. So arrival of the Aryans. So Aryan invaders are going to end the civilization of the Indus River Valley people. They're nomadic. The Aryans were. They were Indo-European people living in Central Asia. So they're from like present day, like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan area. And they created a new Indian society, and they excelled at war. They were very, very good at war. By 1000 BC, they extended their control throughout India, and they decided to give up their pastoral life in favor of regular farming. So being a nomad is not a very fun life. At least civilization is an upgrade from that. So they decided to take that route. And so the introduction of iron is going to help make this change. Remember, we've moved into the Iron Age, and in particular, the iron plow. So the iron plow is going to be a new invention that's going to help to clear the dense jungle growth that's along the Ganges. And they're going to use irrigation systems and turn the area into productive farmland. So this right here kind of shows the movement of those Aryans into India. Okay, so they're moving from the Hindu Kush area down into, so this is the Indus River Valley here, so this is the Indus River here, so they're moving in this area, and then over to the Ganges River Valley. This over here is where there's a lot of jungle growth, and so this is where they were using that iron plow to clear the area. Okay, so as nomads, the Aryans had no written language. So they developed their first written language known as Sanskrit around 1000 BC. And they wrote down the religious rituals, they wrote down legends, they wrote down chants. All these things had previously been passed down orally. So what that means is they would just tell stories to, like, from father to son or mother to daughter or whoever, through the generations. They would tell stories and pass down things through families. And now that they're writing it down, it can't be forgotten. Because if you've ever played a game of telephone, you start off with a story that's, one way. And then as you play telephone, by the time it gets to the last person, the story has changed. Well, it's the same thing with the rituals and the chants and legends. And so, but if you write it down and you just pass it down from person to person, it's not going to change. It's still written down. So this is going to help keep things a little more organized. So from 1500 to 400 BC, the Aryan leaders known as Rajas. Raja means princes. These Rajas dominated India, and each carved out a small state and fought other Aryan chieftains. And so there's going to be some wars between some local rulers. So the Aryan conquest had a lasting effect on India. The meeting of Concord and Conqueror created a set of social institutions and class divisions that do still last to this day. In particular, the caste system. So the caste system was one of the most important Indian social creations, and it does still exist. Not as much as it used to, and it's definitely not as rich as it used to be, but it does still exist. But there is a rigid hierarchy of classes that determines a person's occupation, economic, and social status. Part of it was based on skin color, and if it's kind of like whatever you're born into, you can't move up or down in the caste system. Whatever you're born into, that's what you die in. Okay, and so the caste system looked like this here. So this is Brahma. This is the god, okay, the head god of Hinduism. He's like the main god. And Brahma, um, the Brahmins is the top caste, and they are represented through Brahma's head. The Kshatriyas are the warriors and rulers, and they're through his arms. The Vaishyas through his legs, so they're the laborers, the farmers, traders, merchants. I'm sorry, the Sudras are the laborers, but the Vaishyas are like they have jobs. Um, and then the laborers are the Sudras, and then there's this other group called the outcasts. Okay, and these are the people who do things that nobody else wants to do. So they're like street sweepers, latrine cleaners, garbage men. Like they're in charge of basically anything that other people don't want to do. That they have to do it. So, like I said, there's 5 major castes. The Brahmins are the priests, the Kshatriyas are the warriors, the Vaishyas are the commoners. They're mostly merchants. The Sudras, most of the population are the Sudras, and these are the darker skinned natives that the Aryans had conquered. Most were peasants who did manual labor, and then their rights were very limited, and they still continue to stay as being limited. But the most limited group, like I said, is the outcasts or the untouchables. So they're seen as so low that if you touch them, it would taint your soul. Okay, they make up about 5% of the population, and like I said, they're the ones who do the jobs that other people didn't want to do. Okay, so like collecting trash, handling the dead, uh, cleaning streets, latrines, etc. So the untouchables were not considered human. Their presence was considered harmful. And the reason for that is, as I'm going to go back here for a second. So as you go up and down, as you can move up and down this, but not in this life. So basically, if you're an untouchable, it means you were bad as a Sudra and you got knocked down to untouchable. If you're a Sudra, it means you were probably either you're just starting out, as your soul is just starting out, or you were bad as a Vaishya. Okay, so if you're good in this caste, in the next life you can move up. In the next life you can move up. In the next life you can move up. And then once you're up here, if you're really good, you can achieve nirvana and you can go up with the gods. Okay, but if you're bad, you move down. Okay, until you're down in the untouchables. And if you're a bad untouchable, then that's when you become like animals and things of that nature. So anyway, like I said, that's why it's considered harmful, and they're not really considered human because they were already really low on the totem pole, and then they were even worse in that life. So untouchables lived in separate areas, and when they traveled, they even had to tap sticks together so people could hear them coming, so that they could avoid them. And so moving on to the family. So the family is the basic unit of ancient Indian society. So the ideal is to have an extended family of 3 generations under one roof. So that'd be like grandma, parents, and kids. Now they were very, very patriarchal. And so the oldest male had legal authority over the entire family. So if you lived with grandpa, he had authority over you. So generally, only males could inherit property, and generally, only males were even educated. Divorce was forbidden, but if men wanted to, they could take a second wife if the first was not able to bear children. Children were important because they were to take care of the aging and elderly parents. So just kind of like we expect, like once your parents get older, they expect you to help take care of them. It's kind of the same, but a little more strict. Nothing's going to happen to you other than your parents are probably not going to like you too much if you don't take care of them when they're old. But back then, you could be executed even for it. So marriages were arranged. So men would marry after 12 years of study, and then they were allowed to get married. But the girls married young because they were considered an economic drain on the family. And so, as a result of this, a lot of older men are marrying younger women. And they also had what's called the ritual of sati. And so their dead were burned on funeral pyres. So if you're a wife and your husband dies, you're expected under the ritual of sati to throw yourself on your dead husband's funeral pyre and then die yourself. Okay, so that's what's going on in this picture. And those who refused were disgraced. All right, I'm going to leave you on that very positive note. Don't forget to do your processor. So your processor is 10 test questions. So make sure you're making 10 test questions. 5 of them have to be multiple choice, and you do have to answer them. All right, I hope you all have a good day.